everyone. Welcome to TSP Weekly. This is your tech startup podcast for Thursday, October 23rd, 2014. Today we are once again recording at the wonderful Communitech Hub, as we so often find ourselves. I think we're not in the room with the Star Wars themed graffiti this time, but it's a nice room nonetheless.
No, it's sort of 80s rap graffiti, it looks like today.
Yeah, I think so.
On the side of a train.
Yes.
On the side of the train, yes.
Nothing wrong with that. Well, let's do some introductions. My name is Darren Conley. I'm a local tech entrepreneur here in Kitchener-Waterloo. And with me, as always, is my co-host, the wonderfully insightful and with the voice that's apparently perfect for radio, we've been told today, my fellow co-host and tech entrepreneur, Stephen Campbell. How are you today, Stephen?
I was really excited that I was told I have a voice for radio, not a face for radio. So that was a positive for me today.
Yes.
So very fortuitous. The sun is out after, what do we have, 4 or 5 days of sort of cloud and rain and cold here in Kitchener-Waterloo?
Well, yeah, the autumn rain in Canada can be very cold and miserable sometimes. But
Again, at the beginning of our podcast, I'm talking about the weather. I love the fall. It's bright and sunny and crisp and cool. All the leaves have changed. Mm-hmm. So change is in the air.
Yes.
It's really cool.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And we have a wonderful guest with us today. One half of the founding group of Plasticity. I should announce you like that. I think she's really the heart of Plasticity.
It could be 3/4.
So we have with us today Jennifer Moss, one of the co-founders of Plasticity. What's your official title there, Jennifer?
Co-founder and Chief Marketing Officer.
Chief Marketing Officer. There you go.
Yeah.
Has to be Chief something. That's
I know. It's so arbitrary, really.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
I just chose a title. It seems to work, right?
Yeah. And I think your husband is Chief Happiness Officer, which is probably a title you don't hear at many other places either, right?
No, we actually, it's really cool to meet another Cho. We call them Chos.
Sure.
We met Jen Lim, who is the Chief Happiness Officer for Delivering Happiness when we were in Las Vegas. Oh. And she's formerly from Zappos. Her and Tony Hsieh worked really closely together, and they met.
Yeah.
And I said they were going to have a Chomance. They're just they were so happy to meet another Cho.
Yeah, well, I wonder. It's a smile fest.
It was great. She's terrific, and Jim is a pretty lively, happy person, and we had so much fun.
I wonder if this will be a trend that picks up in other companies appointing chief happiness officers. You can have like a happiness expo or get together or a conference with all the chief happiness officers around.
I hope so. If companies had more chief happiness officers, I think they'd have better companies.
Well, and I think you guys are probably going to be a part of moving people in that direction, right?
I hope so.
We'll jump into what Plasticity is doing in a few minutes here. We want to talk a little bit of tech news before we get too far into things. A bunch of kind of articles we're bringing you today really based around this idea of do we really need an app for this, or do we really need a product for this? And maybe we do. Who knows? We'll talk about a few of them and see what comes up here. First on the list is it's a Kickstarter campaign for ClickStick, the world's first smart electronic deodorant stick. Now, I got to tell you, the first time I heard about this, I very much was thinking, of all the things that need to be innovated on or disrupted, I don't know if the deodorant stick would be at the top of that list or near the top of that list for me. So for those who haven't seen it, I'll just describe it very quickly. If you imagine a deodorant stick, it's a pretty standard kind of form factor, I think. This one has a button on the side. When you press it, my understanding is it dispenses the exact proper amount of deodorant solution
which is sort of a silicone gel based.
That's right. It's like a gel based thing. Yeah. It's not stick based necessarily. They have refills. There's an app that will automatically order new refills for you. So this ties into a whole kind of mobile app. Since it is powered by electricity, there's a charging unit where you have to charge up your deodorant stick, I guess, these days. And apparently, their value prop they're bringing is that, since it's, you're not going to overuse your deodorant, it's going to give you just the right amount that you need. And B, it's going to take care of kind of getting you refills when you need them, so you don't have to have that constant nag in the back of your head. Do I have enough deodorant? It's going to take care of it for you.
Costco, I have more than enough deodorant.
See, there you go.
I think.
So, I don't know. First impressions, guys. Maybe we'll start with Jennifer here, since you're our guest.
I am laughing because I think it's great, and it's great in that I love startup world, because
Yeah.
you really can invent anything. And we're in this inventive, creative modality, and I like that. I think that's awesome. And I think we're using innovation and creativity in a new way, and more and more lately.
Sure.
And so I'm seeing things that might seem bizarre and maybe a bit asinine to some people. And I like that part, but I have to say that for me, I mean, really, deodorant is just
the old
something you
school-
don't run out of,
Sure.
because you are pretty proactive about smelling good.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just one thing that you don't let fall
No, it's
out
true.
of your regular routine typically.
Well, and I know-
maybe as a woman it's different. I don't know, but
Well, I think the product is not too much different, I think, between the men and the women's version. I think. I've never tried women's deodorant. First thing to
Come
know.
on.
But I know for me, once I'm down to the point where the plastic is kind of scraping the skin, I'm like, I've only got a day or two left here. It's time to go to the store and get some more, right?
It pulls out 5 hairs. That's the level.
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
right.
So if I don't have an app to tell me that, I think I'm okay. But I don't know, Stephen. What?
Well, I'm
going to
buy deodorant, right?
Right.
Every day, or I'm going to use it. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to me. What I see here is marketing, because it's all about, I'm going to buy it. So why do I need to buy yours versus the other one?
Right.
I'm a big price point person as a student these days.
Yep.
So their refills are $3 to $8 a refill. So
Depending if you want premium deodorant
right.
or just average.
yeah, scented gel or
smell
super
masking.
power charged,
Yeah.
stuff for. So that's expensive to me for
Right.
an $8 deodorant plus the holder. I
Right.
found it interesting that they have black, white, purple, and a limited chrome edition holder.
Right.
And they're advertising. They want you to listen to your armpit. And it's all marketing. It's all based on sort of going to the gym with a lighted LED lit.
It
armpit
lights up, I
stick in your
think,
bag.
right?
Yep,
Yeah.
lights up.
Yeah.
So it's something that I wouldn't consider if it wasn't marketed properly, but their marketing is awesome. And as you go through it and you think, okay, well, it hasn't been disrupted since the 50s. They are using a lot of plastic in those. There is some environmental benefit. Some of it I can see, if you've got an iPhone, you need to have your lit armpit juice machine.
Sure.
So I can see if it's all marketing to me.
But
And I
part
think
of me
it's
is
gonna work.
part of me is concerned about when you start introducing batteries and charging
Yes.
and extra tech.
what I was thinking.
If the dial kind of malfunctions on my being able to twist up my deodorant, I can find ways around that. It's not a very complicated mechanism to deal with. But if suddenly the battery stops charging, or I blow a fuse or something, does that mean now I have to walk around stinking until I can get a backup, or maybe I do have to buy like a manual backup deodorant stick now to cover me in case something
it.
breaks with the technology.
I think the sustainability too of having to plug something in. We have so many things constantly being plugged in. I see that there's benefits from one side of the environment discussion, and then on the other side, you're still plugging stuff in, and your deodorant should not necessarily be
one of those
plugged
things.
in.
Yeah.
That seems strange, but I think if there was it reminds me kind of the Dollar Shave Club, how you have where you get sent your razors, and it's done very well. Again, marketing, it's done very well.
They have one of the best promotional videos I've ever seen.
It's so
online,
good,
right? But
yes, it's really good. And you're right, it is marketing. But if for some people that deal with severe sweating, or if there is a benefit and it really does work better, I think that would be great. But if they're really just promoting it on those, those merits, it wouldn't incite me to purchase it. But if it was just really, really great working, and it was somehow,
if the product itself is superior, I think, then that's a consideration. But it looks like what they're really iterating on is the delivery and management of the product, right?
And that it's cool and you can plug it in, and people like that kind of stuff. It's amazing what people will buy just because it's gadgety.
It's a big problem in the morning, because you're going to be in the bathroom and you're going to think, okay, which do I unplug, his razor or his deodorant? Because I need the hairdryer right now.
That's why we have 2 different bathrooms.
Excellent.
Yes, we've solved that, several years into our marriage.
Right.
And we only have
That's why we're a happy couple.
That works too, yeah.
we only have a single bathroom with a single electrical outlet.
Power strip.
And this would be an issue, because we're already now at the point where we are plugging in our toothbrush, right? We have an electric toothbrush.
Yes.
And that is something where I've decided, yes, the value of having an electric toothbrush is worth it over a manual toothbrush.
Yep.
Darren, electric Q-tips.
Electric Q-tip.
20%, and we'll run
Yeah,
it
if
for
anybody
you.
invents the electric Q-tip, you can just give Steve 20% equity. I don't have to be in on that one. That's fine. That's fine.
You don't see the value of the electric Q-tip yet?
This is our ongoing joke. If we inspire an
me.
idea through the podcast, then we need to get 20% equity.
That's
on
right.
it.
I always say
yeah.
5 cents every time I say it. So every time I
Yeah.
say electric toothbrush or electric,
Electric Q-tip?
Q-tip,
Yeah.
I'll owe you 5 cents.
What
Okay,
is
perfect.
20% of 5 cents?
Perfect. Yeah, I think
Not
we've
much.
made 10 cents already. Maybe I think this is
Yes.
excellent. All right. Well, let's move on to the next article on the list here. MilkzUpBottle. I hope this is how you're saying it. It looks like that's how it's supposed to be. MilkzUpBottle. Essentially, now we have an app and we have a gadget that are going to help you track how much milk that you have in your fridge. Now, I have
thought
to
your
say,
deodorant was a problem.
Well,
Now-
honestly, though, I have to say, in our house, this occasionally does become an issue. So my 4.5-year-old and I, every morning we sit down and we eat our cereal together. This is our morning routine.
Right.
We do go through a fair amount of milk. Nobody else in the house uses the milk except for me and my son. My wife generally stays away from dairy, and our 8-month-old is only drinking milk, but from her
different
mom.
kind of milk.
Yes, right. Yeah.
So anyway, my son is definitely not staying on top of the milk situation. I'm generally forgetful about what the state of the milk is unless I'm in the middle of using it. When I go and I find there's no milk, yes, I'm very aware of what's going on with the milk. But the rest of the day, it never enters my mind. So at least with this one, I can see... I can at least say I've personally experienced some of the problem that maybe they're trying to solve, right?
Sure.
Keeping track of the milk, making sure there's enough for breakfast. You don't want your 4.5-year-old freaking out at 6:45 in the morning or whenever maybe it's about 7 that we have breakfast. So,
What cartoons on then?
I don't know. We don't watch cartoons in the morning.
We'll
He
have to
plays
talk
he
after
plays
this.
some Nintendo in the morning. That's
Okay,
what
that's good.
fills that.
Yeah, I like that.
But before we get into critiquing the product, let me just describe it a little bit. It is a plastic bottle, and if either of you guys remember this better than me, you can correct me if I'm wrong. A plastic bottle that you stick in your fridge. It has a webcam attached. It has a light inside the bottle. You plug it into a USB port for power. Apparently, the newer fridges have USB ports inside them. Mine doesn't, but there you go. The light is for when you close the fridge and the lights are off. It can still use the light to use the webcam to track the level of milk in the bottle. My understanding is you put your milk inside their actual bottle in order
So it's
to
a
track
clear
it, right?
thing, and they're using a camera to measure the levels and not something you put in the milk to see.
No. There's nothing added
The
to the milk.
container
or anything
itself
like
doesn't
that.
measure the milk. It's just a camera,
Right,
basically.
right. And then you can, using their mobile app, track your milk level throughout the day. And there's kind of 4 different levels. So milk's up, milk's down,
Wax
milk's
on,
low,
wax off.
yep, or milk's out. And so I guess if I'm walking past, the grocery store and I think, I wonder if we need to buy milk, I can't quite remember. I can pull up the mobile app. I can get a very accurate, reading about the milk situation, and off we go. Has milk ever been a concern for you guys? Is this something that,
I mean, I can definitely say that in our house, the kids drink the milk.
Sure.
Jim and I don't really, but the kids do. And I've had mornings where there has been no milk for the cereal because our kids will put it back in empty,
yeah.
which drives me nuts. But they do, and then they're frustrated, obviously, because they have to have something else, which typically means that I'm then going to have to make something.
Yep.
So there's a benefit to that. I do find that for, the way that Jim and I work is that we'll quickly have a chat before we go home, and we'll talk about what we need to get. And sometimes we'll over purchase milk because it always gets used. The same thing as bread. So we'll buy extra bread. So for those families that are trying to be more budget conscious, I think it makes sense because then they're not just over purchasing, although it does get used. If you really want fresh milk, there's a benefit to that.
As long
right?
as you don't buy hordes and hordes of milk. I mean,
Right, yes.
there's a rate at which you're going to go through it.
There's like an overlap of a day, maybe,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go through 6 sleeves in 3 days. I have 2 boys, so you can't over purchase milk. I don't think. Like that, we do the same, right? So when we go, we get 2 bags of 3 each, and we'll have to go again and get milk throughout the week. I just went and put some gas in the car and got some milk last night, right?
Yeah, I go more than once a week, but but not twice a week. But it's just me and a 4-year-old for the most
Right.
part, so I
Right.
think we're okay.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I do think we have a container, and I love having a container. We used to pour our milk into the glass container, and I think that's nice to pour it from that.
Yeah.
I guess maybe for the weight of a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, I don't know how heavy it would be, but
Well,
I think
yeah.
it would be good on the way home to be able to check to see if it was in a container, and that means it's a bit more sustainable. Again, the plug-in though,
there's the plug-in factor, and do I have to unplug the milk container every time I take it out of the
know.
fridge? Like I think that could get a little bit annoying. But here in Canada, generally people are buying their milk in bags, right?
Yes.
And then you stick the bag into a
Plastic
holder,
sleeve.
yeah,
Yep.
and you're
it's
pouring
easy.
it from there.
Snip.
And so
Right.
if I'm going to make use of a product like this, it means coming home, I still have to go through that process of putting the bag into the sleeve, snipping the thing, and then now I'm taking the extra step of pouring it into this smart container.
Yes, right.
And every time that smart container gets empty, I'm transferring milk from the.
And do you have to
so on
plug?
and
When
so
do you
forth.
plug it in? While there's milk in it, do you have to take it out?
Yeah, no, I think while there's milk in it, I mean that's how it knows the
So
levels,
if you
right?
can't plug it into your fridge,
Yeah.
then you have to take the milk out of the fridge and plug it in.
You just run an extension cord into your fridge.
Which see, I'm
I think
again
it only
another one.
works-
I love the creativity, but I'm not.
No, I
totally
know.
Sure the
This is
use.
one of those things that I think like the Internet of Things is coming along.
Yeah.
Again, November
Yes, right.
13th, we're doing our Designed Innovation Conference at Conestoga College.
You always got to
So,
find a reason
There's
to
a little
plug
pitch
it, huh?
there. I didn't do it at the
great,
beginning.
though.
See how I slid it in the middle?
Yeah, no, that's great.
So we one of our speakers is going to be Ian Pillion from the Internet of Things.
The meetup.
The
group,
meetup,
yeah.
our
That's
conference.
local here. Yep.
So one of the things that I see is this is one of those products like the smart shoes we've talked about, or somebody will take this and incorporate it into the Mac Daddy fridge. So you can
Right.
put your milk here, and it does monitor that. It will monitor your eggs. It will monitor the things that you go through quickly.
Yep.
It'll do the cheese in the produce drawers.
Sure.
There's a student at Conestoga College that's working on her capstone project where she's got a fridge app,
Right.
and she's got a recipe app, and
Yeah.
she's got a calorie app, and they're three separate. It's a family of apps, but
Right.
you're able to say what is in my fridge now, and you pull that to build a recipe to go to the grocery store with, or you
Yeah.
can see what you have, what you can make, that kind
That's a
of stuff.
great
so it's out
idea.
there. But
Yeah.
she's trying to do it with the smart fridge. So
Right.
there's some electronics and some hardware and some software. And
Now, when we say
so it's
smart
really-
fridge, like what I would like to see for a product like this, and I think the idea, like we've said so far, is not without merit. But I'd like to see something where there is like a camera, or maybe a camera for each shelf on my. For my fridge, that's installed into the device itself.
Right.
That's tracking everything that's on that shelf, and it can just kind of see by looking at the level of milk in the container, where things are at, as well as for everything else. Now, I'm probably oversimplifying what the process would be, but I mean something where I can not have to install a separate app and a separate piece of hardware for every single product, but to
You can have
the
weight
whole
too.
range.
You could
Yeah.
measure the weight if the milk is, or the eggs, or anything. Like I think you
Yeah.
were mentioning
Yeah.
that you could just have every single level be measuring
Right.
based on weight, but you would have to put everything back where it belongs,
Yeah.
which would actually
Well,
be the most wonderful thing from a mom's standpoint. Sorry,
Yeah.
kids, the smart fridge has told you
Yeah.
that you have to put the milk
wonder-
back right there.
I wonder if you had a little tag on the bottom of your milk sleeve holder
That it
thing,
fit.
right? A little NFC tag that wherever you stuck that, it reads that that's where the milk is, and so the weight there is the
That's
place.
a good
right?
idea. Darren,
We're coming up with new
25%.
startups as we go along.
Really,
right?
guys,
Yeah.
the answer here is not moving forward, it's moving backwards. We need
Right.
mini snuffleupaguses in our fridges, like the Flintstones. And then he just
right.
manages everything in there,
That's right, yes.
Give me the small furry dinosaur
Give me a
in my
fridge
fridge,
manager.
and we're off to the races.
Or maybe the
a great
modern
idea.
version is a little robot that hops around in your fridge and takes care of what needs to be done, right? But
My snuffleupagus can beat your robot's butt.
Yes. And then cut
a
my
new bumper
kids'
sticker.
food for me, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Perfect.
babysit and
They crawl out of the fridge and organize
laundry.
the tables. Yeah.
Sure. The fridge just dispenses ready-made food
That's
eventually,
right.
right? You don't even have to deal with it.
sounds lovely.
Well, I think now that we've solved all the problems with that product, we have one more. We have one more that we want to talk about here. So this is a product. It's very much still in the prototype stage. I don't even know if we could fully call it a startup as much as a prototype device that we might see at some point. The dynamic chair, being produced by a gentleman by the name of Govart Flint.
Awesome name.
It is a great name. I wish I knew the background of that name. I've never heard of a Govart before.
No.
But anyway.
No.
It might be my new secret name. I had Sir Gamer, and I also had Gerg Namnerg. That's
Right.
my pseudonym. But Govert Flint is pretty...
Ermagerd.
By, what did you have?
Ermagerd is just one of my favorite memes.
Yeah. I'm a big name person.
Yes.
So I
Govart.
did Jim and Jennifer. You're Gerg Namnerg. That's actually my friend Greg Greenman.
Yes.
It's just backwards. So you're actually Raffinage Som.
Raffinage Som.
Yeah.
There you go.
So there's your
Sounds very zen.
backwards.
I'm Narad
secret.
That's very
Yelnock.
Who are you again?
Narad Yelnock.
Narad Yelnock. That
For
sounds
Darren-
very
for Darren
spacey.
Conley. It does a little
Yes.
bit.
Yeah.
But we don't want to talk about innovation
No,
on names necessarily.
Govert Flint is
we're going to
awesome.
talk a little bit about this product. So the name of the product, once again, the dynamic chair. They're trying to address this issue of, there have been a lot of studies in the last couple of years about if you spend too much time sitting still, working on a computer, doing nothing, it's supposed to kind of increase your chances of developing all sorts of crazy health problems later in life. And so this gentleman was like, well, if we have to sit and work at a computer, can't we make that a little bit more dynamic? Can't we get some motion involved in the process? And has come up with a chair that will allow you to kind of, provide mouse control, what would typically be controlled by your mouse, through the way that you move on your chair. So it's kind of sliding your butt around and kicking your legs up. I think it was, to click the mouse, you kick your one leg up in the air. Maybe it's left leg for left click, right leg for right click. I'm not sure how far they've gotten on the development of that process. And then the way you kind of move your butt and the way you move your hips.
Wouldn't a clench be a mouse click?
Maybe that's middle click.
Like, just makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not intuitive
Clench
design.
for the middle click. Sure.
Yeah, like to lift the leg. I don't know. It's just,
I don't know how you work the middle click scroll reel functionality with the clenching, but
yeah. You want to be in the A/B testing room for that?
these are all problems I'm sure to be overcome as they move forward with this product. Now, if you guys go to the link on our site for this article, you can see there's, I guess it's like an animated GIF that shows, or GIF. Did we ever settle on whether we say GIF or GIF? I think
We think it's GIF because it's graphic interface. So you have to.
Sure.
We just decided.
Fair enough.
GIF.
I've always said GIF, and my nerdy friends have said that too. But maybe we're just
maybe it is
cluster.
GIF, but then it's not graphic though.
It's true.
It's GIFic.
It's true.
Then it'd be giraffic.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. But I know when you're in programming, when you're dealing with regular expressions, they call it regex for short instead of regex.
Yes.
So.
Well, thanks
I
a
don't
lot,
know.
Darren.
I think this is an unsolvable problem.
The letter G has always been an issue, I think.
Yes.
It's open
unruly.
source. You can make it whatever you want.
Yes,
There we
right.
go.
It's
Yeah.
tomato.
So if you look at this animated GIF on the article, you can see a bunch of people kind of sliding back and forth in their chairs and waving their arms in the air and making things move on their computer screens.
It was ridiculous.
It looks a little goofy. I have to admit, like to see it looks a little
Yes.
goofy. I think the heart of this thing is in the right place, but
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you guys think? What could you see yourself kind of wiggling your bum?
This is all
during the
marketing
workday?
again. The video they had wasn't product testers or users. It was all actors.
Right.
They were doing things that were not didn't make any sense. Like she was trying to read something and scroll through a website, and it wasn't really effective. So it was proof of not concept, but you could sort of see what they were getting at.
Yeah.
But again, this is a marketing thing that if it's marketed right, it's kind of like the standing desk.
Right.
Can you imagine trying to do this podcast where we had to slide around to do stuff? It just would be so silly, So that, then we don't have to go work out for a half an hour after the podcast because we've gotten our exercise. So
Right.
again, I like you and Jennifer said, I think the environment, the sandbox is awesome because we can be as silly as we want. The brainstorming is so outrageous that we get this kind of stuff, which will, outrageous ideas can translate into some of the best discoveries and best products and stuff. But
Right.
so it's really encouraging to see that nobody's saying no to this kind of a thing and that we're allowed to experiment here.
Yeah.
But I don't know that would ever. I don't see it ever going anywhere. And me ever wanting to use it so that I don't have to exercise, because that's what he's kind of saying is.
Well, yeah, I guess the idea was why sit at your desk still all day and then go to the gym afterwards to
Right.
put in the exercise component? Why not kind of
Just
combine
combine
both
the two
somehow?
yeah.
But
And because
I feel like I
that's
don't
the reason.
really feel like you're, especially too, is you should get a sweat on, and if you're moving that much to sweat at your desk while you're It's a lot of gyrating at your desk. And I think, too, I can't even imagine.
Now we have to meet with an investor.
Can you imagine being in this large workplace and having everyone
kind of gyrating around?
I can understand if there's music playing or like take some time.
Richard Simmons sweating to the oldies.
We did a tour of Zappos, which is quite awesome.
Sure.
I have to tell you, they've obviously figured it out. They have great culture, and there's music playing, and people are up, and there are the stand-up desks, but there's also the ability to sit down. People have the balls that you can sit on.
Oh yeah.
And now in classes, you have the kids classes. You do have the ability to kind of have movable desks so kids can kind of shake. Yep. I just don't think tying it to your work, to your productivity, or tying it to your work is necessarily the best way. I think we should get up and we should walk around and we should move. I think that's just a healthier approach. Let's educate people on the benefits of moving around.
Sure. And you've been checking your email for 20 minutes.
Scroll with our legs. It's just, it seems strange to me. But
Sure. I agree. And I think I don't know if I really want to be sweating at work, right? Like if I'm meeting with people or if I'm dealing with coworkers, maybe this ties back into the dispensable, electric deodorant that we talked about earlier. But I'd rather kind of not have to bring a change of clothes, even if the benefit is I'm getting a decent workout while I'm, trying to scroll through my website or whatever. But I can't imagine, having to update an Excel spreadsheet and, just because I didn't flex the right butt cheek in the right way.
The visuals that you're missing right now.
I can't get it to land on the cell or whatever.
Darren is,
we need this to be a webcast right now because it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I think you just closed down your operating system with that last move, actually.
Well, what happens?
Control Alt Delete.
Think of all the swear words that are going to happen when someone kicks in the wrong direction and they lose their entire file.
Or they kind of kick to open the file and they knock their monitor off the desk or something, right?
Yes.
It would be cool for an artist maybe, or a video game. Like I see the Wii Fit kind of mixing in or something like that. So there might be an application or a spot for it, but not the spreadsheet world or not presentations even. I don't think a PowerPoint presentation would still be awkward with.
And they are still kind of inventing a chair. Like it is something you're sitting in anyway. Like I think there could be ways to integrate, like you said, more movement into your workday that don't involve awkward chair gyrations. Yeah.
Well put.
Yes. Yeah. It's a good start.
Sure. Their heart's in the right place. I think creative. You should just keep your butt in the one place while you're working rather than
and then just get up.
Yeah.
Just
get up. Yeah.
Just go for a walk.
Yeah, or visit somebody's cubicle nearby or whatever. Right? Good excuse to be social as well.
That's it.
All right. Well, I think we've done enough with some of this crazy apps that we have out here or inventions, but always interesting to talk about. But let's talk a little more with our guest here. Jennifer, typically when I've seen you, it's been you and your husband together, since you're co-founders of Plasticity together, and very rarely have I had the chance to kind of sit down and hear about some of your experiences, on your own. And I understand Jim's off taking care of business today. Which is fine, which is awesome. Yeah. That's all about making a startup work. But but maybe you could just let's start out just by hearing a little bit about what Plasticity is and what they do, and then maybe we can get into the backstory after that, if that's cool.
Yeah, sure. It's great. Thanks for having me. It's great. Just for the listeners, Darren and I actually met at South by Southwest a couple years back. And
2013, I think.
Yes, and you were living abroad. You were living in Qatar, right?
I was living in Qatar. I was in Austin just for the event, and I was pitching at a contest actually.
That's great.
And bumped into some fellow Canadians when you and your husband were doing your thing down there. Yeah,
it's really great. So it's been an evolution since we met 2 years ago. It was the Smile Epidemic then, and now we're Plasticity, which is it's like the heart of the Smile Epidemic, just very broadly developed. What we're doing now is essentially building technology for workplaces, and we're helping them improve their culture, but we're really focusing on building up social emotional intelligence and measuring it, and connecting people inside the organization to build up those tools, and that's also training those tools through technology, so that employees can build up those skills to flourish in the workplace. It's a very tough place for some people.
Sure.
Work is not as glorious as we see it. We love our jobs and we love work, and for some people it isn't that way. So we're trying to help those people to have happier experiences at work.
You know, I hear when I'm listening to the radio sometimes, the local radio station, some of their little kind of bumpers between segments, they say stuff like helping you make it through your work day, or
Right.
you know, getting you to the end of the day faster, or something like
Right.
this, with this kind of assumption that you're just kind of surviving through the work day, and it's a grind, and it's, you know, not something to be happy or excited about. And it always makes me think of you guys when I hear
Yes.
something like that.
We want to say, you know, TGIM. That's what we want to change for people, because it really is an amazing thing to love your work that much that Mondays are an exciting time for you. Sure. And there's so many people that just can't wait to get to the end of the week. They're you know, biding their time. Either they're biding their time, which is actually about 50% of the North American workforce is just biding their time.
Wow.
And there's only 20% of people that are highly engaged so that they love their Mondays. And then there's 30% that actually on Sunday night they start to physically get stressed and ill and sick before Monday starts. So imagine how that impacts your life. And you spend 70% of your waking hours at work.
Right.
I mean, that's a huge amount of time at your work. And if you're feeling stressed all the time, that's your tragic.
Life. Your life has
That's
become,
your life.
you know, something that you dread.
You dread. And you can't turn it off at 5. People think, oh, well, I can do my time and I'll go in from 9 to 5. And then at the end of the day, I'll just shut it down and I'll go to my family and there's no spillover. Well, our bodies don't like that. They don't work like that. Our brains don't work like that. It doesn't shut off.
Right.
It spills over.
Absolutely. Now, what does your it's a platform of some sort, I
Right.
guess, that's
Yes.
operating in the workplace.
Yep.
What would it be like for me to interact with that platform? Is it analogous to some other product that I might have used, or what is it like?
Yeah, so we started out really just in this stage of being able to connect people in the social collaboration way. You know, there's other companies that do that. I mean, Salesforce has Chatter, and there's Workday and Connections and some of those other things, but that really isn't what we're focused on. What we're focused on is giving that as a opportunity for people to go inside the space, disparate offices and people that are on even in other departments or other floors can have a way of finding out what the other person is doing. So that's a part of it. But really what the kind of the backbone is that we ask people every day how happy they are, and they can self-report how happy they are. It's very simple.
Okay.
And we also ask them what made work great today. So they answer through a positive lens using positive psychology to answer what they love about work for that day. We found out with the Smile Epidemic that doing interventions of gratitude for a minute a day actually changes the brain. And and there's a lot of science around how you do things from the neurosciences standpoint. If you repeat something every single day, you develop the habit of it. So the habit of gratitude will actually increase your fluency in gratitude. So we ask people to start thinking about things and being more grateful for what they have, not focusing on what they don't have.
And when you say you ask people, this is something that kind of pops up on your screen, or
it pops up in the app, and it's really before you enter the app, you have to answer. Well, you can skip too, but you answer how happy you are, and then you ask one of our 12 questions, and it's just one question, and it's based on the Hero Index, which is we measure hope, efficacy, resilience, optimism, gratitude, empathy, and mindfulness. So we measure these hero skills, and
So it's the hero gem.
Yeah, the hero. Yeah, that's right. What we call the hero generation too is something that we're trying to develop. But we do ask one of those 12 questions every day before you enter the app so that we can start to track it. And again, it's all anonymized data, but what we do is we get people to self-report and share their narratives. There's other surveys that live inside the app too, but there's also activities that live inside the app so that you can start to help people if they're self-reporting low on, say, inspiration or gratitude or some of those things. We're able to funnel training in so that they can start to improve those traits. And it's very much an individual's experience. The workplace has the benefit of having happier people, but our goal, I mean, Jim and I, from our background, our goal is to really just make every individual have a more flourishing life, and we don't make them, help them to find out what that is for them. Their level of, optimism, that's optimal for them, or their level of gratitude that's optimal for them.
Sure.
And so they can live their best life. And then
Right.
the payoff is, of course, to the organizations who get to see, in which we do, we track it to sales, we track it to things like ENPS scores, and we track it to productivity, open tickets, all those things. We track it to say, okay, you are increasing these hero indices, and what's translating is 50% from one of our companies, 50% increase in sales over the last 6 months, the highest in record for the last 10 years.
Have switched from looking internally to what do our numbers look like to externally, what do the
Right.
customers think of us? And this is a natural extension of that. It's the companies are measuring their success based on how well their employees are feeling. And that's an extension of how well the customers think you're doing, right? Because you don't want
right.
yourself to tell yourself we're doing great. It's groupthink and it's dangerous, right? It's so it's really it's a natural evolution. I think you guys are in the right spot because I just see it happening even more. The successful companies get it, right?
That's it.
So
Yes, that's absolutely it.
Can I just ask as well then, if I'm a Joe employee at a larger company with 300 or 400 people, and I'm participating in the system, is there a way for me to kind of discover or connect in with what the group how the group is developing or increasing? Is it an individual thing, I guess is what I'm asking, just me interacting with the app, or can I see somehow, somewhere,
like we're all happy, or we're all not really,
or the group development?
That's a really good question. So yes, it's both. So there's your own individual journey, and that's great. I don't really like to say the word journey, but I also don't like to use the word professional development because it really isn't either. It's really
it's an experience, right?
It's an experience inside the app, so it's your own.
Sure.
But then you also do, you do get company statistics. You see how many people have finished certain courses, certain tracks. You also get, you can understand, and this is in our, we've just essentially launched this new iteration of that. But what you'll see is that over here, the happiness level of the company at 84%. You'll see that, and it's broken down for the leadership team. They get things, they get the data broken down even, deeper.
Sure.
It's not that they get to see by individual, because we never want a happiness, the happiness tied to a 360. That doesn't feel like that's really making an impact on happier employees, but in aggregate. So they get to see, based on department, in different countries. We're in 22 countries, so you'll be able to see, in different teams in different countries, and it's broken down that way. But the individual will see, hero index. They'll be able to see, the overall aggregate score of the company, and some of those other, I think, components that are important to the person and how that measures back to themselves.
Sure.
And that's, I think, really important too, is being able to track not just how you're doing, but how your company's doing. And then there's also ways for you to be able to see when you've written something down that maybe you've had a kind of a low day, and you've shared that, and you've shared some narratives around what that was. You start to be able to see this kind of living journal. So you can say, okay, this was a bad day, but I've noticed that every time I have a bad day, there's 3 good days after that.
Sure.
So there's a lot of self-analysis, and it's done through a scientific way so that we can almost pull ourselves out of that analysis, so we can look at things with much more objectivity than being in the middle of it and having to give ourselves our own cycle. It's usually not that accurate.
Well, and I like that concept you mentioned earlier about you're training people in the language and the thought processes of gratitude and of being happier people. Because I think, just kind of collecting statistics is one thing, but teaching people to actually think differently to improve themselves is a whole other thing. And you can't kind of just sit people down for a seminar and say, okay, now we're going to teach you how to be happier.
That's
right?
it.
It's like you say, the daily training, that developing of the habits, and almost kind of sneaking in there to make them, without them really knowing they're changing their thinking, they're suddenly, hopefully finding themselves much happier people.
They're thinking differently just based on the behavioral sciences piece of it changing.
Right.
I mean, Jim and I have gone through this evolution, and it's not an overnight thing. I mean, and it is also a psychological fitness training is what we call it. It's that every day practicing gratitude. We practice gratitude every night at dinner with our kids, and there's a commitment to it, and people kind of think, okay, well, there's this happiness lens, and that everything's perfect, and that's really not what Jim and I are about. We have our own regular, frustrations with the milk, not, being put back in the fridge empty. I mean, everyone has their regular things. It's more just about having a state of, your state of stability, because we really, as humans, what we've realized through the science too, our brains actually like contentment. Right. So it's not necessarily these peak highs and peak lows. It's more just about every day being able to get back on track and being generally happy with our lives. And that's why you start to see that the need for, monetary compensation kind of levels out. Everything levels out. Right. But the one thing that we've started to realize with our science is that gratitude is something that never levels out. That it's one of these really interesting things that are happening in the brain, that there's never you don't hit a peak.
So
you don't need a
ceiling. There's no thermostat where it turns off, right?
No. And that is what is remarkable, is that you can continue to evolve that, and your level of stability we track it in a really interesting way on Plasticity, where it looks like a stock chart. You start to see that kind of like out of a stock, it kind of bumps up over top, right. And then it hits it breaks the barrier, right. And then it hits a new level where it starts to fit inside this mean.
Sure.
So that's sort of what you see with your own brain, is that you create these desire paths in your brain. The neural pathways to optimism and gratitude get shorter and shorter and shorter. So your brain starts to naturally select being more grateful and being more optimistic. And then it hits a new level, and you level up.
Yep.
And then you can level up again. So, and that's really what's interesting. It's like running a marathon. You start to get better and better at it. You see people that run their half marathon, and then they run their marathon, and then they're running Ironmans.
Right.
You look at gratitude as the potential to really be able to run your gratitude marathon or your Ironman, and do it without feeling winded.
Sure.
It's such a refreshing flip from, we went to the talent collision, Darren and I, here at Communitech, and I think Jim was there.
Yes, right.
We waved at him.
Not
spoke
formally presenting, but
yes.
As an attendee.
He hacked that. I think.
That was so skill based, and it was so everybody's looking for a rock star, and that's not what you're talking about at all. You're talking about culture and just not skills at all. So it's such a refreshing thing to look at. Then we want the rock star that can program well and do it all, but they don't talk about who that person is. The great things they can do. So that's the efficacy, I think. I had to look that up, actually.
Efficacy,
that is desire to produce a desired or intended result.
Right.
There you go.
That's it. And knowing you
beat
can
empathy
change.
in the hero part.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, too, is we look at our psychological capital. We talk about it as human capital, and inside of organizations. And skills is actually 25% in those. Even just the top 5 big personality traits are typically fairly ingrained, right, from by the time you're 3, you have a kind of personality in those top 5. Yep. And your IQ is a certain sort of set state, whereas there's 75% of the rest of your brain that's this malleable part that is your EQ.
That's still plastic and moldable.
That's
so to speak.
it.
Yeah.
It is. Sure. It's plastic, and you can train it. And
mine's got 2% body fat.
That's impressive.
Thank you.
You're psychologically fit.
I didn't know what the metrics were. I just threw one in there. I'm glad 2% is good.
Yeah, that's right. Or your 75% EQ is you're maxed out on your EQ, right?
Yeah. Thanks for playing along.
Fair enough. I love that there's so much science behind what you guys are doing as well, because I think it would be very easy if you didn't have the research and the data to kind of say, well, they're just one of those feel-good kind of startups that's trying to make people happy, but who knows, what's actually working, and it's kind of airy-fairy. But no, you guys are highly engaged in what's going on the research level, and doing your own research, as I understand it, yourselves. Too,
yes,
right?
Yes. Research is a huge, huge part of where we started from. Jim went back to go to get his PhD, and then he met a whole bunch of researchers that were already working in this field. And it was more just out of a curiosity of trying to figure out why the Smile Epidemic thing, what is it about the Smile Epidemic thing that's working for us and for our family? And so let's figure out how to, just figure it out. Let's see what comes out of it. And after that, we brought on 7 PhDs and some pretty extremely talented people in the field of social psychology and positive psychology, and understanding why the science piece really matters. Right. And we realize that it does matter because, first of all, Jim and I aren't scientists. We feel like we've kind of got a lot of scientific background after spending so much time in it, but really, I mean, we can talk comfortably to it, but the people that are driving the product and developing the product are really our 7 researchers, our scientists. And we do all this in-lab testing to make sure that the programming that goes into the product is not just backed through the data, but it's also backed in lab. And we take people completely outside of the experience of plasticity to test those programs on them. We did gratitude interventions, and what came out of the response to their ability to focus out of just a simple gratitude exercise and their engagement levels and their desire to do benign tasks. So things that you put off, gratitude is actually eliminating procrastination. So there's all these things from a productivity standpoint that people that are more grateful are more likely to tackle things that they don't like to do, or they self-report before the gratitude intervention is something that they don't like to do, and then they realize, oh well, it isn't it isn't that bad. No big deal. It's just part of my job. So there's a whole bunch of these small tests that we're doing by obviously understanding that the importance of science will play into the product and play into the value. That has been great for us because we've hypothesized that there's something to it. And when you hypothesize something and then it actually turns out that it's real, it's such a great such a great validation that Absolutely. Jim and I might be intuitively feeling something because it's working. But then you go and ask scientists and they say, well, you're right.
It's true. No,
you know how much I love being told I'm right by 7 scientists. I have to tell you, if every woman could have something in their purse, it should be 7 PhDs.
Yes, have agreed with me on this topic.
Think how hard it is when I secretly go and say, "Can you prove to me?"
That's right. Prove me right here.
Prove to me that putting the cap on the toothpaste is actually better for the psychological makeup of your wife.
I don't know. I might put 7 good marketers up against your 7 scientists.
Well, we have to be careful because
perception is reality.
Jen's background is actually in marketing, I believe, too, right?
Yes, both of us.
She would be recruited on my team for sure.
Well, speaking of background, let's get into a little bit of the backstory here. And we've already mentioned Smile Epidemic a few times.
Yep.
So where did this entire thing start? You guys haven't necessarily been involved in happiness research for a long time. I think it's relatively recent. Yeah,
it is relatively recent. It's funny because we talk a lot, Jim and I, about our route to here. And even though in the time when we were living in it, 5 years, 6 years ago, it wouldn't seem like it makes sense that we were there. Now, in this orthogonal way of getting to where we are now, it feels like it made perfect sense. It's almost strange.
Yeah, sure.
But Jim and I both were in San Jose for a period of time, and I was working in HR tech, or HR professional services, and then we focused on technology too. And so it certainly has played into now, but at the time I don't think we would have ever assumed that. And Jim also in sales, he was working in sales, so that's played in now to supporting what we're doing. But I think from a personal standpoint, going through living abroad and living in San Jose and away from family and going through that whole experience of living in Silicon Valley too. I think that's been a big part of our journey. But being so far away from family, and then when Jim, who was there, playing lacrosse and then got very ill, we realized that through that experience, through being away from our family and not having that support system, we became very grateful for home.
Sure.
And being away from home and then coming back to it and having our kids there and realizing that kids need family and they need all those things. And
this is home for you, the area where we are now? Yeah?
Yes, this is home for us. And I think a big part of why we came back here and not maybe Toronto or somewhere else was that. We were choosing to leave San Jose, which is a fabulous place to live.
Great weather.
Yes, great weather, and we had a good life there. I mean, it was certainly an excellent life.
Yeah.
But when you start to get back to the basic things that you need in life, you realize that they aren't the things that we had there. The things
Sure.
that we need were, grandparents around our kids as aunts and uncles and a support system and all those great things. And I think the reason why we started a software company and we're flourishing here instead of Silicon Valley, because we know that the irony is not lost on many people, that we've moved back to Waterloo out of Silicon Valley to start up a company like ours, that the reason why we're flourishing is because we do have that support system and we have people that can hold us up. Sure. And I think also in the fact that we are grateful for very simple things. We're grateful for the air that we have in the country we live in, and we've reduced our needs by so much, and yet we're the happiest we've ever been.
Which is awesome.
It is. It is awesome.
Now I've heard from Jim. I kind of heard the story several times of how you started on the gratitude journey, and I know that story's been told several times in several other places as well. So I don't know if we have to get into all the details of it necessarily here, but maybe just for the listeners who haven't heard any of that, just a very brief kind of intro to what brought gratitude so much to the forefront of your lives back then.
Sure. You know what? My experience too is different than Jim's. So when I was traveling with my friend, we were doing the typical wine touring fun stuff that I say I was an occupational hazard of working and living in San Jose, is that every time someone comes down, you're forced to go to the wineries.
So Napa or Sonoma?
Napa, Sonoma, either one, or Carmel, or anywhere pretty much in that area. I'm, just drag me kicking and screaming to go wine tasting. So we were out, and I got the call. Actually, I was in this dead zone when we were driving, and then when I got out of the car, I noticed that there were all these calls from Jim's mom, and Jim's mom calls, but not like this. And I got Jim's number and then a whole bunch of friends, and I thought, that's strange. So when I did call Connie back, I found out that Jim was in the hospital.
Right.
He had been training the day before, literally, because he was going back to play pro lacrosse. He had been climbing up this mountain with these pile of rocks in his backpack. Like
Rocky Balboa style.
He was a pretty hardcore trainer and very, big. He played defense, so he was, definitely fit.
Sure.
And then I found out that he was in the hospital. And for me, as a wife of someone who's a pro athlete, he is in the hospital a lot.
Sure.
It's not like an unusual thing. He's had 11 broken noses. He's had, every surgery you could imagine. Yeah. We joke that the only thing that's still his, I think, are his teeth. So that's
Move on, Darren. Yeah. Move on quickly.
He looks well for an artificial man.
There it is. He's bionic, right? Yes, he's bionic. So it's. I mean, we kind of, it's a joke, but it's also a little, be a little dark.
Sure.
But when Connie said she was flying in, I thought, okay, well, you're flying in from Canada to come see Jim. Something's pretty major.
Right.
So I went back to the hospital. We drove very quickly to see him, and he's there on the gurney. And I find out that he's been, he's very sick. He's not moving. He's talking about being paralyzed from his fingertips, his feet. He's not moving. We're scared. They end up diagnosing him with West Nile, or finding that he has West Nile and swine flu in his blood, and a few other things that he's picked up. But basically what happened is his immune system just started to shut down, and every single thing that he could catch, he did from his travel. It was just all in his body. And then they diagnosed him with a post-viral illness, Guillain-Barré syndrome, which starts to shut down, potentially shut down your major organs. Yeah. So it was pretty traumatic. And what I did at that moment is just say, whatever happens, just live. Yeah. Everything that was an expectation before, whether it was put the cap on the toothpaste, earn income to take care of the family. I was gonna have a baby in 6 weeks.
Wow.
So you very quickly were able to get back to basics with him. Just live. Yeah. That's the basic,
just
right?
Live. Yeah. It was just live. Yep. And that was all I wanted. And so we started to see very quick wins in the first couple of days. The treatment that they gave him was working. The illness had plateaued. So it was a few days, it was 48 hours or longer, where we just waited for the drugs or the treatment or whatever it was to kick in.
Right.
So when it did, and he was okay, or going to be okay in whatever state this was that he was in right now, then that was all that mattered. And whether he ran or walked or anything, again, it didn't matter to me. He was going to be there at least to be a father in the lives of my child that was there, Wyatt was already born, and then our baby that was coming in 6 weeks.
Right.
So when that happens, everything shifts, everything changed. And then he started to recover, and we were told he wasn't going to likely walk maybe again. And then it was, it's going to be a year.
Right.
So then we went through the rehabilitative process. He was in the hospital for 6 weeks, and he had to learn how to brush his teeth again, learn how to stand in the kitchen and cook a meal. This was after he could stand.
Yeah.
And then
Electronic deodorant might be handy.
for someone in that condition. Yeah. I mean, anything where you get some level of support because, or me, like I was going to be the one that was going to do those things, but it didn't matter. It was really strange. It did not. There was stress. Don't get me wrong. There was a lot of stress. I would come home at the end of the night and I'd have to tell Wyatt that everything was fine, and I'd put on a smile for him, and that really helped. And I also realized then that my energy and my narrative and the way that I described the situation to Wyatt really impacted him. And I started to extrapolate that in how I would communicate at work to people, how I would communicate to my family, his family who was worrying, the people that would ask me about him. I started to kind of put a filter for people. And it was maybe my own protection at the time, but it also really helped people to support him and his development and his healing and all those things. So I would put on a smile, and then that whole fake it till you become it thing, it does really work.
Sure.
And
you waged a marketing campaign against yourself.
You do, and you turn your brain around. And so I was changing the way I was thinking about it, and then it helped. It helped Jim because I was able to have more energy, to be there, even just because I would wake up in the morning early, go in to see him before work, bring him a coffee and some things that made him feel good. And then I would go into work, and I was very, very pregnant, and I go into work and work that day, come at lunch in the hospital and be with him, go back to work, go home, we'd make dinner for him. So we'd have a homemade meal in the hospital. Yeah. And then we would go back, and my mom would take Wyatt home, and I would stay there until the lights went out. Essentially, I got kicked out. Wow. Then I would go home and tell Wyatt that everything was fine, and then I'd cry. Sure. Then I'd put Wyatt to sleep, and I'd cry, and it was hard. But then the tears, every night got a little bit less, and I started to see things improving, and the world shaping up to be a little bit better.
Sure.
And then at 6 weeks, he walked out of the hospital, and he was there for the birth of the baby, and I think that's when we said, okay, we've something in the way that we're doing this. We need to continue doing this.
Sure. Now, and I know Jim has talked about gratitude journaling and practicing that as a big part of his recovery process as well. I'm assuming that was a big part of leading into phase one of your startup life with the Smile Epidemic.
Yes.
Can you tell us just a little bit about the Smile Epidemic?
Yes.
Because I know that kind of grew into Plasticity later, right?
It did. And you know what? Jim was really involved more in the gratitude journaling than I was. I did do some writing, but it was more, alleviating stress. So journaling versus gratitude journaling. He actually came, I think, to all of this sooner than I was. I was very pragmatic. I think that's our personality too. He's extremely optimistic. I'm kind of in the middle where I'm optimistic, but I look at things with a critical lens too. It's
a good trait for a wife to have, because I find my wife and I have that thing too. I'm the dreamer. I'm the visionary. She's the one who kind of grounds me a little bit and says, "Okay, we got some things we got to take care of here, though." Right?
Yes, yeah, and I mean, I think that's more where I fit. I think he was born with like massive levels of optimism, and he's just been able to increase them. I sit sort of in the middle, but I didn't come to that yet, and he fostered that and really looked to understand it because it helped him in his own healing. He saw the healing part of it happen so quickly, and obviously, sports psychology, he's had this ingrained in him since he was young, to be able to deal with defeat, to be able to lose literally from shift to shift, to lose in the middle of a hockey game at a high level. He played pro in both hockey and lacrosse, so he's deeply ingrained this mentality.
You have to have a very short memory.
You do, which serves you well sometimes. And so he used that to his benefit, and where I was, just kind of figuring things out and doing it in my own way, and which was slower. But when we got home, I started to feel immediately like things were good. And when I don't know, it was like I just came back to my roots, and I felt very safe here. And so he was journaling and he was starting to see these benefits. And then we started to do it with our kids, and we went back to school, and the kids were starting to see and finding out from our researchers that once you do things every day, you develop this habit of gratitude that you start to report to things that are happening through your entire day, which is really cool. And then we said, okay, well, Jim was going back to school, so he was doing some studies, and he heard the kids in the bathroom, and they were giggling and playing in the tub, and he felt like I don't have time to write a gratitude journal right now, so he just wrote this thing down on this piece of paper and the smile and put up to his face and took a selfie and posted it to Facebook, and he got all these responses back, and it was kind of a weird thing, but it made sense. He wanted to share it. He wanted other people to know. He had lots of people from his sports days that kind of followed his progress and his healing. So he shared those kind of things, but usually it was through a post. But for some reason, he wanted to share that this is what made him happy, and he did it in that way. And there was a huge response. And so we started this Smile Epidemic blog. Jim actually started it. So that's great. And I started doing it too. And we brought it into our kids' kindergarten class and did that. And they started to write down what they were grateful for. And we thought that was really neat. Yeah. So we started kind of trialing it in schools at first. Smiles in Schools is what we called it first. And then the Smile Epidemic blog just kind of was doing things on its own. And then it started where people from work were doing it at work every day. We were challenging them to 30 days, anyone to 30 days. But people were going to work and actually making this part of their kind of programming, where they would do every day at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They get everyone together and they do their selfies and they put their sticky notes up on the walls, our analog version, we called it. Yeah. And then they'd post it to the Tumblr blog. And we thought, okay, well, we should probably... There's something to this. What is it? So
it's almost like you're doing the gratitude journaling, and it was TLDR, too long didn't read, and the smile is just get it. I get it. If you want to go to the deeper stuff, you can go read it, but it's like bam, Instagram. Gratitude journaling.
A photo,
1,000 words.
Exactly.
And this is the visual generation now, online especially, right? It's how we come up with the visuals. And you tapped into that inadvertently, I guess, right?
Absolutely. I mean, kind of the whole idea of the shortest poem. Yeah. It's this picture. We had many days of crying looking at the Smile Epidemic. There's this woman up there who has a picture of a piece of paper that says, "No more chemo." Wow. I mean, that is... powerful, and people reading through this you think, wow, she's brave, and then you also think, my life is actually pretty good. I'm not dealing with that, and I'm so the whole exercise of seeing other people's gratitude can be super impactful on your own life too. It's not just what I'm writing that I'm grateful for, so I'm changing the way that my brain is interpreting my life, but it's also seeing that other people have all these different it's all these different levels of pain or happiness that they're living on, and you start to feel connected to them, and you also feel empathy. There's all these different things that come out of that.
I think I saw that picture in your office. You have it.
We have it framed.
On the shelf there, right?
Yeah, we were talking about that because I said, was that part of Jim's illness? And we didn't think it was. It wasn't a cancer thing at all. So
it grounds us all the time, and we go back to the Smile. We used to go to the Smile Epidemic every day, but we've retired it and we're bringing it back because we developed a consumer app for it, and that's where we went to South by Southwest to actually show that off. Sure. But what we realize is that it needs to be the habits that we need to ingrain are not easily developed ourselves. Right. We have a habit of not doing things that are really good for us over and over and over again. So because we have this bias, and it's part of many years of it being part of our DNA, that we are looking over our shoulder or looking for the saber-toothed tiger that's going to eat our food. We have a negativity bias that's deeply ingrained.
No, we don't.
And so, pardon?
No, we don't.
Yeah, I know, exactly. We're naturally inclined to think that way. So to ingrain this habit of positivity takes a lot of reinforcement. And we found that, okay, so who's going to benefit in both ways? Well, employees will benefit and companies will benefit because there's this payoff, but the employees, the people will benefit. And then we could have a mass kind of proliferation because then it becomes a corporate standard. And so in our, we joke, it's a maniacal laugh that we're going to make 1 billion people happy, but we really do want other people to have this benefit. And then if there's ROI to it, then there could be no argument, right, from the CFOs that have to determine.
Well, and it's a very interesting kind of transition because I think I lost touch with you guys in the middle of that transition period between the Smile Epidemic and suddenly you emerged as Plasticity.
Right.
But it makes so much sense. Of all the places where you want to make people happier, the workplace seems like the perfect target. You have them kind of attentive for 7 hours a day or 8 hours a day. They're almost forced to do it, but they're forced to make themselves happier people. And of all the things to be forced to do, why not kind of do that?
That's
company's employing.
That's exactly. We think, you know what, even we've noticed when people first, not people, but the senior leadership on board Plasticity, and they do a launch and say, we're doing this. Yeah. There's an instant increase in people's happiness because they're saying, well, you care, like you're even if they don't believe it right at first. Yeah, it's about making people helping senior leaders to say, let's give quick wins and make it based on what people are actually asking you that they want. Right. We do simple polls, pizza for lunch this Friday. Do you want pepperoni or mushrooms? It's just about saying, I actually care about those little simple things because what's interesting about all of this is that it's a lot of simple things. It's complex in that there's so many stimulus points, and you need to have so many places where you're engaging someone's brain and life. But they're very simple requests that you're making them and simple tasks, and it's about understanding that people, we even on our cards we write down what we like in our coffee. Knowing what someone likes in their coffee and bringing them a coffee with cream and sugar or black. And you know that about that person. It's so simple, but it means a lot to people. Absolutely. And we forget that it is just those simple things that can change an entire organization to feeling like I am valued, I have value, I have a voice, versus I am ignored, no one cares about me. They send me this survey every 2 years and I answer begrudgingly and I lie. And that's how you're determining whether I care about am I a productive worker or not. So that's the difference is say, ask someone what they want on their pizza or what they want in their coffee versus this, 10 question engagement survey that you give them every two years. That's not going to change anything.
And it's such a parenting tactic because right now, one of the most important things I'm doing is helping develop my 10-year-old son. And we're trying to empower him and let him make his own choices and bring him up. And that's exactly what you do. We're having pizza. I've decided that. But you get to decide, do you want mushrooms or pepperoni? And you don't give them 10 choices. And you don't say, what do you want on the pizza?
That's it.
So it's slowly, but we don't do that in the workforce anymore.
We don't.
Right? And it's so focused on your son and the family. Yeah. But then it makes so much sense. It's really neat to listen to.
It is the small things, and we do that with our kids, and it's not.
But we don't at work. It is a small thing. We should.
We should. And again, that's why what we've come from the Smile Epidemic is if we really do want to enact change, and Jim and I are committed to our goal, our mission, is that it can't just be just simply the social collaboration tool because that's not going to work. Just that, or it's not just tiny surveys because that's not just going to work. And it's also we can't just do professional development because that's not it. It's like tying all these pieces of the puzzle together, even though it means creating this absolutely insanely complex technology, which it is. Fortunately, we've hired a very, very smart team. Yeah. But it's about creating this extremely smart technology that does do the small things. We're saying we're using technology to humanize the workplace. Right. But you can't do it any other way because you can't scale one person. The CEO can't know what everyone's what everyone takes in their coffee. It's about trying to crowdsource that a bit and also lean on each other in the workplace to do those things for each other. Sure. So we don't need that one person, or we don't need our boss to be the parent. Right. We get to just have a community inside the
so you build that tool and then you flip the power switch on it, and then once they're all powered, those little nodes, then that ether starts to get generated and that magic, right? And you can't generate the magic with just one or two pieces. They all have to kind of work and over a little bit of time, and then then that something is rocking.
And that's absolutely, you totally got it.
And I love that irony of using technology to humanize.
Right.
That's perfect. That's
human-centered design.
So much of what people complain about with technology these days is it's dehumanizing us. So
we can use it for good, and we can use it for evil. Let's use it for good.
Absolutely.
Let's use technology for good, and we can do some really spectacular things with it if we just have the right intentions behind it.
Sure. Now we're actually a little bit over time, which is fine because I think we've had a great conversation. Maybe you can just give us the very quick summary of where Plasticity is heading from here, moving forward. Yeah. Maybe a little peek into where things might go or how things are developing. What do you think?
Well, sky's the limit right now, which is really exciting. It's about choosing where and what to do. I think that's can be the downfall to lots of companies like ours is that there is a lot of options and where do we go with it.
I think you were handed a bunch of money recently too.
Yes, which was it's great. We do. Yeah. We have some money, which I have to say increases productivity a lot.
That's a blessing and a curse, right?
Yeah, it does. It's great. There's lots of good problems. We say we're going to break what we need to break first, and then we'll fix it just by having good problems to solve. But a big part of that, I think, is just getting the technology where we want it to be to do all those things. It's doing a part of it, and it's doing it in a really great way, in a 1.0 way, but we want to take it to 2.0, 3.0 way, which means really understanding from the data standpoint how to actually predict, do predictive analytics and say this is where you were in your organization. I mean, we just signed the City of Kitchener, which is very exciting. So there's this idea of actually working with municipalities, kind of be able to map it to GDPs and some of those other things and say, okay, well, you're happier in your cities. Look at what that translates. And they have a people plan that's 5 years old. So we're actually going to do a 5-year study with them, and that helps us be able to actually show and track some of those other things. We're moving into the industry, the restaurant industry, food and service, which is exciting, and then wearable tech, being able to actually start mapping physiological stresses and how that can change the way you are inside the workplace. Is your heart rate increasing? Perhaps you need a mindfulness exercise about to go into a meeting with someone that is stressful. Maybe it's you've just got off a call. If you're a frontline salesperson, you just got off a call with a really hard person on the other end. Perhaps you need an empathy training or a resiliency training to get you back into a place of calm. So those are the kind of things that we'll begin working with Fitbits and some of the Jawbone, some of that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of really cool things on the horizon. We've started to already go down that route. We just signed on Sean Aker to our board. He is going to be on Oprah's tour this next year. So he's a very important person for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so there's some really good, exciting things happening. Yeah.
And the last thing I'll just ask is if people want to find out more about you guys, if they want to, where are the places online where people can go to read more about Plasticity or connect in or track with what you guys
follow your tweets or anything.
Yeah, so plasticitylabs.com. You can come to see us there. Twitter is Plasticity. And I'm at Jen Lee Moss, and you can come find me on Twitter. I'm tweeting about a lot of this kind of stuff as well, so you can come find me there. Sure. And Jim's is the Smile CEO, so you can find him there as well.
On Twitter,
and our website has all of that, social stuff. But we do a lot of tweeting around neurosciences and happiness, and we're actually starting this weekly tweet up 1:00 on Monday. Starts November 3rd, and we're gonna be doing Cho Chats, we're calling it. But we're bringing in chief happiness officers from all the ones that are out there, and anyone that's actually focused in their title around happiness or culture. We're going to bring them on, and they'll answer all your questions on how to make your workplace happier, how to even find skills in yourself to be happier at work, and what's to come in the role of the chief happiness officer around the globe.
Interesting.
Darren, I'd like to officially apply for the TSP Weekly show position.
Yes.
We should have one.
Aren't you already doing it unofficially?
Well, I need a business card then.
If that role includes making me happier, then
I'm in.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, it has to be a volunteer position at the moment.
Absolutely.
We have no income. So anyway.
That's chief happiness officers don't need to get paid.
They get fed in smiles.
They get fed in happiness.
That's
right.
right.
There you go. Perfect. Yep. Well, that's awesome. I think it's incredible all the things that are happening, all the potential kind of in front of you guys, and this is just kind of the start of the journey in many ways still.
Right, yes.
So all kinds of places this can go. That's great. we got to wrap things up.
Yeah, I had a great time, though. Thank you. This is really fun.
Our pleasure. Absolutely. Well, let's throw out some thank yous. So first of all, thank you to Communitech for letting us record in their space here. I'm hoping somebody else hasn't signed up to use this room because we have gone a little bit over, but that's okay. And thanks to you, our listeners, for joining us for another episode of TSP Weekly. Please feel free to send us your comments, your questions, your criticisms, your feedback. Our web address, our email address for that is feedback@tspweekly.com. Or you can just come onto our website, tspweekly.com, and leave a comment on the post for this podcast. That would be great. We want to thank our guest, Jennifer Moss from Plasticity. Excellent to hear your stories, and thank you so much for your input on potentially useless apps.
I love it.
I always have a lot of fun talking about that. So for myself, Darren Conley, and my co-host, Stephen Campbell, thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.